So I'm Van Miller, and I'm an architect. Next month will be my 40th year of being an architect in practice. I was educated at the University of Michigan back in the 70s, graduating with my Master's of Science in Architecture in 1976 and a Master's of Architecture in 1978. Architecture is one of those professions that requires an apprenticeship. So you're required to get at least 3 years and potentially 5 years of apprenticeship before you're even entitled to take the exam. So my first job out of college was actually working for the state of Michigan. I got a summer internship to begin with the university architect at Northern Michigan University in Marquette. Originally, the first summer there was time spent in doing a study of Americans with Disability Act coverage for college buildings. It was late 70s, the legislation was relatively new, and all the campuses, public facilities were being required to open up their facilities, make them more accessible to handicap. And the university had me spend the summer doing sketches and drawings to get them started on that path. It was a great opportunity for me because, of course, it was a new law, it was a new way of practice. And the most beautiful thing is I had access to like 15 to 20 university buildings built over several decades, which gave me a really good insight into the art of architecture and observing all those drawings and then go comparing them to what was built, comparing it to what was common at the time and what was now required by the code. So it was a really good start. And then at the end of the summer, I guess they liked me because they put me on a project of new construction called the Vocational Technical Center. And that was just a great project to start with. I was the site resident inspector, they called me, working directly for the state of Michigan now. And I had a small trailer on site, and I spent about a year and a half, 2 years there while that building was being built, learning everything from how to put in an automotive shop to a steelworking studio to a dental lab. The building itself, because it was a low tech center, just had a lot of different components to it that were valuable to me as my career went along. In addition to all the things I learned about personalities, how to run a job site, all the activities that occur, and all the coordination needed. My second job, then going from there, I went back to the big city of Detroit, and I worked for Giffords and Associate in a major firm, which had about 600 employees at the time I was hired. Sadly, over the next 2 years, that went down to about 400 employees as the person to the left of me and then the right of me was laid off, and Detroit was doing as Detroit often does, having one of its big downturns. It was the Lee Iacocca days. Chrysler was going bankrupt, and we had bumper stickers that said, with the last one to leave Michigan, please turn out the lights. So I sort of turned out the lights. I took my wife and my 1-year-old son, and we moved to Florida. In Florida, I went to work for a small firm, so another kind of contrasting job. And I worked for John Hobart, a local architect, and we did several projects together over the next year and a half to 2 years. And then John decided, as a lot of architects do, that he was tired of supervising employees and wanted to go back to being an architect. So he let 3 of us go. And I decided I was going to go out on my own. So I put on a tie and jacket and went around, and it's kind of hard to knock on millionaires' doors and say, hey, are you going to build something this year? But what I did is I went to general contractors' offices and I said, hey, I'm a young architect in the community and I'm looking for work, and is there anything you need? And I was able to find my first few clients that way, which was a real blessing. So that was the beginning of my own practice, 1983, and the end of my employment as an architect. So fairly young, I started to be my own boss, which I think is a lot of architects, certainly the people I went to school with, we all have the dream that we're going to be the architect and have our own practice. It was interesting that while I was in college, the dean called us all into a big auditorium one day and gave us a lecture about the statistics of becoming an architect. And at that time, if my memory serves me, he told us that less than 20% of us in the room would actually become a licensed architect. And of those 20% of the people in the room, only 2% would ever become a architect who had his own practice or was a partner in a practice. So when I opened up my own practice, even though I just did it, putting my drawing board on the washing machine and using my dryer for a reference, I was my own architect, and I started my practice. Like I said, I got a few clients and started learning the real lessons of architecture. One good piece of advice I could give anybody is when you're going through architecture school, try and get as much business background as you can, because if you're going to have your own practice, then very soon you're going to find out that things like payroll, hiring and firing, paying taxes are all duties that if you're, on a budget like I was and trying to start your own business, then those are a lot of the things that you're faced with. And then the personnel problems, the personality problems, the things that go along with in your practice. I think I was always fairly good at getting along well with my clients, and I had a good persona and smart, eager, working for too little money. So I got a lot of the first 5 years are the toughest, of course, for any business. And my first 5 years were no different. I learned, like I said, those things about personalities and employees and trying to get a staff you can work with. And everything was drawn by hand. Paper and pencil was the way of the day, although we used Mylar pencils, they were called, and a plasticized paper that we drew on and made it easier to erase and maintain a good looking drawing. But after about 3 years of practice, my brother-in-law, who was actually a fire protection sprinkler contractor, came down. He said, "Hey, Van, are you still getting every job you bid?" And I said, "Yeah, isn't that great? They must think I'm good." And he goes, "No," he says, "I think you're bidding too low." And so it shocked me. So the next year I doubled my prices, more or less, and I still got every job that I did. So that shows you the big hole in my education was really the business sense, knowing what to charge. And I had left practice too early. My bosses in the 3 firms, I learned nothing about what architects charge for their services. I just went out on my own, decided to give myself a raise, charged more than I had been getting paid before, and started gaining experience. So it was a tough first 5 years. It's battles that you have to go through growing up that you have to do. So after that, because I did have a wife and a child, and then I had a second child, and then I had a dog, and then I had 2 cats, and then I had a house, and then I had a church membership, and then I joined the Kiwanis Club, and then I had baseball practice with my young kids. And so life just sucks you in, and you continue your practice and maybe not learning as much as you should, just doing, occupied with the tasks of the day, both the business, the family, the clients. You get really busy. And I would say almost 20 years went away just going in every day, finding the next job, keeping people busy, trying to develop more knowledge about my craft, and plus living a life of American livelihood at the time. 2 cats in the yard and all that. So after a while, I did gain a lot of experience, and my experience was primarily in the development of condominium housing. My name is Van, and people call me Vandominium. It's kind of a local joke, but there are literally hundreds of people in the community that would probably recognize who you're talking about when you talk about Vandominium. I did numerous multifamily housing projects, starting with mostly golf course communities, small 2-story, 3-story, sometimes 5-story buildings, oriented along the golf course for golf course views, small footprint apartments that were sold to part-time residents who would come down here to Naples, Florida to go golfing. And it was a real nice bread and butter account for me to be doing those condos. One building would get built, and then when the second get built, you'd be able to add to your fee a little bit. And so there was always sort of a continuing cash flow that was developed by doing in the condominium business, and it seemed like a good business move for me. Literally probably 70 projects with 7,000 residences or something like that over the years. As I grew, my clients grew. And then one particular client called Signature Communities in Naples, Florida, grew from doing small, affordable golf course communities like I talked about, to where they bought better properties, a little bit higher end clientele, continually expanding the formula of what we were doing to sell to the market, as part of the development team, basically in the conceptual phase, and then grinding it out through the production phase of getting the drawings and other exhibits necessary to basically obtain a permit. I used to preface my contracts that I'm providing you with the services necessary to bid, permit, and construct the project. And that was my primary goal. The more I did that, the more experience I got, the more I met with people at the county, the more knowledge I got. I became very expert at reading the building codes, interpreting them, making sure my projects met the building codes, which was, as we all know, is one of the primary responsibilities of the architect. Until eventually we did some projects on the beach in Naples. I have a 9-story building that sold for about $2 million a unit on the beach called the Vanderbilt. I have another 72-unit building on the beach where the average sale price was more like $4 million. It's a very popular building today. I think the units sell for at least twice that much, if not 3 times that much today. It's a beautiful location next to a state park and view of the Gulf of Mexico. And, then 2008, 2010 hit. One of the lessons you'll learn as an architect, that when the economy goes down, you can pretty much expect that your business is going to go down with it. And as much anxiety as that causes and everything, the sooner you learn that that is the nature of the business, the better. I had 3 major downfalls in the business due to the economy. One was the savings and loan crisis. Another was the Gulf War I, caused a lot of hesitancy in the market. And the third was, of course, the big mortgage breakup in 2008 to 2010, where I saw my business go from averaging about $20,000 to $30,000 a month of billing down to 0 in a matter of 1 month, and basically stayed down for almost 2 years before I was drawn back into the market by the project that I'm currently on, which is called Kalia Bay in Naples. It's a series of 5 high-rise towers. The design architect was Lars Young. He had been an intern of mine in his early practice, knew my client very well, and they worked together to develop the design for this series of high-rise condominium towers located just off the Gulf on the Intercoastal in Naples, Florida. And I was brought in on Tower 2 because of my knowledge of the codes and my knowledge of building construction, to basically enhance the project and make sure that we had an easy time in permitting and constructing the project, and to work directly with the subcontractors as well as the owner to make sure that we were building the best product that we could for delivery under the current codes. So that's a lot for today. I think that's it. Again, I'm Van Miller, and I'm an architect.